Let's get ready to rumble!
These are the 20 biggest heavyweight title fight upsets in the history of the heavyweight division, according to the opinion of Boxing, Beats, and Rhymes.
And Sullivan is down on his face. The crowd has changed. They're all for Corbett now. Sullivan is up. He sticks out a weak left hand. Corbett jabs the left once, twice, 3 times to John L's face. Sullivan is helpless. He's down from a right to the head. Sullivan is bleeding from the mouth and the nose. Sullivan is up. Corbett smashes both hands to the head. Sullivan is down.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Corbett is the winner and new champion.
James J. Corbett, formerly a bank clerk and educated man. He boxed as an amateur. San Francisco's Olympic Athletic Club is where he learned to fight under the tutelage of Walter Watson, while John L. Sullivan was a bare-knuckle fighter, a big drinker, fight men in the bar, prize fighter, fighting with the knuckles. He went into the contest as champion, so he's the first Queensberry Rule champion. Sullivan hadn't been in the ring for around 3 years, but everyone just thought he was just going to overwhelm Corbett, although Corbett established himself as a contender by fighting a 61-round no contest with the Black Prince, Peter Jackson, an excellent fighter in his own right. Sullivan wouldn't fight Peter Jackson because he was black. The two men actually had an exhibition, a 4-round exhibition in 1891 at San Francisco's Grand Opera House before they had their actual title fight on September the 7th, 1892 in New Orleans. Corbett caused a big upset with his scientific, more educated boxing, knocking out John L. Sullivan in 21 rounds. The betting odds were 4-1 in Sullivan's favor.
The time of the knockout was 2 minutes, 27 seconds of the 6th round. Sharkey, still too dazed to walk alone, is helped to his stool by his cornerman and referee Arthur Donovan. Carnera, after a long climb up the ladder, has at last achieved his ambition. The 6th round started much like the first, with Carnera pitching uppercuts, and it ended suddenly and dramatically, as Carnera became the first Italian to win the heavyweight mantle. So, Primo Carnera became the world's heavyweight champion, June 29, 1933.
Jack Sharkey was handily dealing with Max Schmeling for the vacant New York State Athletic Commission heavyweight title when Schmeling called foul on a low blow and won the title while he was still on the floor. In a rematch, he avenged the loss to Schmeling and won the heavyweight title. But in a fight before that, he cleaned up Primo Carnera pretty handily on points. So when he defended his title against Carnera in 1933, it was expected that he'll handle him again because Carnera was basically mob controlled. A lot of his fights were allegedly fixed, clumsy, very big, powerful looking specimen. I mean, we're talking 6'6", 85-inch reach, big man. And we're talking about a quality operator here in Jack Sharkey. Jack Sharkey was schooling Jack Dempsey until Dempsey old-manned him in the pocket by hitting Sharkey with a low blow. When Sharkey looked at the referee for assistance, Dempsey clipped him with that left hook and got him out of there. Quality boxer was Jack Sharkey. Great jab. But he got knocked out by Primo Carnera. Carnera took him out with that big uppercut, a right uppercut to the chin. Allegedly, there was rumors that the fix was in. The gambling odds shifted in Carnera's favor somehow. But Jack Sharkey denied he ever participated in any fixing of the fight. Yeah, it was a massive upset.
And Braddock, maybe, as the two embrace, maybe he's pulled off one of the great comeback stories of all time. Max Baer makes his way back to his corner disconsolately, and certainly the Braddock corner think that their man is the new champion of the world. Shortly we'll hear the deliberations of the judges from our Master of Ceremonies tonight. And here now comes the verdict.
The winner and new heavyweight champion.
So the celebrations begin. Braddock's won it. Max BAER failing in his first defence. And James J. Braddock from New Jersey, aged 29 in his 84th professional fight, is champion of the world.
Some boxing analysis will say that James J. Braddock's prime years were spent around light heavy middleweight, and if the weight class was around back then, he would have been a super middleweight too in the 1920s. I'm on his box rec and I'm seeing Leo Lomsky, and the name is resonating to me because he lost to him a couple of times. He lost to Lomsky, and Lomsky does have a paragraph in the book I purchased. The author, Chris Dixon, Damaged: The Untold Story of Brain Trauma in Boxing. So he's got his own war story to tell. Braddock, he lost a title attempt at 175 to Tommy Lauren in 1929. Lauren, I believe, gave the belt up after and pursued at heavyweight. Braddock found himself on welfare relief. Brittle hands, losing a whole lot of fights, basically. Taking whatever jobs he could get, working on the docks. And he managed to put a little run together and got a shot at Max BAER, named the Crown Prince. He liked to mess about, party, talented, very powerful hitter. He took the belt off Primo CARNERA, and Max was a big favourite going into this. I've watched the fight, like edited highlights, extended edited highlights. And he's just clowning around, just messing around, and like it was a weird performance. And Braddock worked hard, kept the jab going, and he took the belt off him. Massive upset. Massive upset. So much so, there was a film based on his story. Russell Crowe plays Braddock. Big upset. Definitely a big upset. BAER was a 10-1 favourite to win the fight.
Charles collapses like a sack of grain after that incredibly well-timed punch explodes on his jaw. The champion struggles to rise. He's on his feet, but he stumbles backwards from the continuing effects of that devastating punch. Let's watch that again in knockout slow motion. Walcott comes in almost nonchalantly. Now here comes that left hook. That punch twisted Charles' head almost completely around. Look at his distorted features.
At 37 years of age, Jersey Joe Walcott became the oldest heavyweight champion at that time. This was his 5th title attempt. He got robbed in the first title attempt he had against Joe Louis. Basically, he schooled Joe, floored him twice, but didn't get the decision. In a rematch, Jersey Joe looked like he was in control. And then, he tried that crazy footwork he had. He had some stylish footwork, and Louis got one shot off, incapacitated him, and then finished him off and knocked him out. Louis retired after that. EZZARD Charles became champion after that, outpointing Jersey Joe for the vacant title. EZZARD was never really recognized as a champion until Louis came out of retirement and tried to get the belt back. And then the lineage continued. Charles beat Joe Louis on points. EZZARD was full champion. Jersey Joe would try again to take the title from EZZARD in 1951, losing on points. And in Jersey Joe's 5th attempt, Walcott smashed him with this left hook. Sort of looked like an uppercut too. Smash type of punch. And knocked EZZARD Charles out and became the oldest champion ever. It was hard times for Jersey Joe. He had a lot of kids to feed and he was relying on these sandwiches. Some people say breakfasts paid for by welfare in preparation to fight EZZARD Charles. 37 years of age, kept his physique in magnificent condition. 9-1 underdog, and he did it.
The referee, Ruby Goldstein, stops it. It's all over. INGEMAR Johansson is the winner in 2 minutes and 3 seconds of the 3rd round. Patterson, knocked out for the first time in his career, has been on the canvas 7 times. One of the most devastating barrages in heavyweight history, has sent the title out of the United States for the first time in 25 years. Ingemar Johansson becomes the first Scandinavian-born fighter ever to hold this most important of all boxing titles.
Both men participated in the 1952 Helsinki Olympics. Patterson won a gold medal at middleweight, while Ingemar, campaigning at heavy, took on Ed Sanders from America in the final and was disqualified for a lack of effort. Now, Ed Sanders, very well-proportioned heavyweight, strong, athletic. It looked like Ingemar was a little intimidated. I'm not sure if America took Ingemar challenging Patterson that seriously. European heavyweights at that time were very low on the totem pole, although Ingo could punch and Floyd was vulnerable around the whiskers. Ingemar, he was progressing as a pro, obviously. He knocked out Henry Cooper, defending the European title. And Eddie Machin was knocked out in one round. That was an excellent win. And that's what earned him his shot at Floyd Patterson. He floored Floyd 7 times and it was stopped in the 3rd. Floyd took revenge the year after and knocked him out in 5. And then the year after that, he knocked him out in 6 to erase the deficit. But as a 5-1 underdog, Ingo and his famed bingo right hand did the job.
At the end of this round, Liston's corner will call the doctor to the ring and, over the champion's protest, stop the fight. Cassius Clay celebrates his victory, goes into the record book with Corbett, Tunney, and Braddock as another who brought off one of the great upsets in the heavyweight history. Clay is proclaiming, "I am the greatest. I'm the king."
What makes it so good? The people thought that if I won, it was going to be a big, but it's not no. Liston's shoulder went out. He could not continue. Winner by a TKO in the 7th round, Cassius Clay.
Patterson would eventually lose his titles to the uncrowned champion Sonny Liston, losing to Liston in one round consecutively in 1962 and 1963. Liston was shut out for approximately 4 years. Some people have different accounts. But it was around the time when he beat Mike DeJean that people were saying, yo, this is a serious challenger. Like, when's he going to get a title shot? And no, Rocky Marciano didn't duck Sonny Liston. He knocked out Cleveland Williams in 3. Nino Valdez was knocked out in 3. Cleveland Williams was knocked out again. And like, Floyd Patterson weren't going near the likes of Cleveland Williams. A terrific puncher, Cleveland Williams. Roy Harris, who took Floyd into the 12th and was still on his feet after a spirited challenge, couldn't get past the 1st against Sonny Liston. Zora Foley was destroyed in 3 by Sonny Liston. Patterson not going near the likes of black fighters like Cleveland Williams, Zora Foley, Eddie Machin. That was engineered mostly by Cus D'Amato, his manager. Eventually, the public not really prepared to stomach any more of Patterson's opponents. He's cornered into fighting Sonny Liston, and Liston obliterated him, obviously. And Liston was thought to be unbeatable. He had the 84-inch reach, heavily muscled, hit like a truck. The jab alone was a formidable power punch, and he was expected to run through Cassius Clay, as he was named at the time. Muhammad Ali, as he was later known, won the Olympics in 1960 at light heavy. He was fast, he was unorthodox, he'd done things that they say shouldn't have been done, like pulling back from punches using his reflexes. He had already as a pro been floored by Sonny Banks. Didn't look good against Billy Daniels. Struggled to get past Doug Jones in the Eliminator for Liston's title. He was on the floor and saved by the bell against Henry Cooper in his last fight before challenging Sonny Liston. Henry Cooper, the British heavyweight hope, his manager Jim Wick said, "I wouldn't let Henry on the same side of the street as Sonny Liston." That's how feared Liston was. Liston punched out a row of Wayne Bethier's teeth when he knocked him out. Muhammad Ali, 22 years of age. They didn't know how old Sonny was. Some people say he could have been in his mid-30s, maybe over 40 at the time. Didn't have the accurate identification or certification to know how old he was. The bout was held in Miami. Sonny couldn't lay a glove on Cassius. Couldn't lay a glove on him. There was one moment around the 4th and 5th round where some liniment got in Ali's eye. Eddie Machen said when he fought Liston that his eyes were burning him. There may have been another opponent who claimed the same thing. So I don't know if foul play was at play. Ali got on with the job. By the 6th round, his eyes had cleared and his foot speed, jab, reflexes, combination punching was a revelation. One of the best boxing displays ever recorded. The Ring magazine said this was the upset of the decade. Ali was a 7-1 betting underdog. 43 sports writers at ringside out of 46 had picked Liston to win by knockout.
A quick left from George. Another. Frazier is down for the 5th time in this fight. 5th time. 3 times in the 1st round, twice in the 2nd. Bacani checked Frazier's senses. It's target practice for George Foreman. Frazier is ready to go again. There he goes. 3 times. 3 times. Angie Dundee is screaming, stop it. It is over. It is over. It is over in the 2nd round. George Foreman is the heavyweight champion of the world. And I'm going up into that ring to talk to Joe Frazier, the loser, and to George Foreman, the winner.
Foreman, gold medalist in Mexico 1968. Joe Frazier, gold medalist in 1964 Tokyo. Sometimes I have to catch myself and ask, why is this fight considered an upset when you look at it in hindsight? Well, Joe Frazier is the first man to beat Muhammad Ali, his undisputed champion of the world, 29-0. He had previously defended the New York State Athletic Commission title at least 4 times or so, and he had defended his WBC, WBA titles 5 times before facing George. 37-0, 34 knockouts was George Foreman's record going into that fight. You know, he beat fringe contenders at that time like Chuvalo, Peralta, but there was nothing outstanding on the resume, so to speak. It was a good resume, and he finished whoever they put in front of him for the most part. And he was dangerous. 6'3", built like a house, horrible jab to face for any heavyweight. The fight took place in Jamaica. Frazier was a 3.5 to 1 favorite. Not massive odds, but he was the favorite. Frazier was floored 6 times in 2 rounds. One left uppercut seemed to lift Joe off the floor. And stylistically, it just was a bad matchup for Joe. Just a really horrible matchup for him. They met again in 1976. This time, Frazier managed to get into the 5th round before getting knocked out. Now, for those who are saying it's not a huge upset, Beats, no, it is a huge upset. But you have to, without trying to preach down to you, it may seem like that, you got to know a little boxing history. Foreman was untested at the time. He was untested apart from the Chuvalo victory and Peralta, who none of you know. You'd never heard of George Peralta, so you can't boost up his resume if you don't know the names. I know the names. He was untested. He was relatively untested, and Joe was in the biggest fight in the history of the sport and won it against Muhammad Ali. So it was a big upset, and especially the manner that George did it is what you have to consider.
Foreman's going to get up. He's trying to beat the count, and he's out. Oh my God, he's won the title back at 32. Muhammad Ali, and everybody is fighting to get into the ring now. Ali is heavyweight champion of the world at 32 in the 8th round by a knockout.
So from unproven, George Foreman takes the scalp of Joe Frazier in 2 rounds. In defending his world titles, he destroys the Mexican contender Rahman in one round, who had the audacity, I believe, to spit in Foreman's face. Maybe not in his face, but he spit at him. Maybe at the press conference or the weigh-in. Probably the worst decision the boxer ever made, to be honest with you, to spit at Foreman beforehand. Because Foreman fought angry. He got Rahman on the ropes and started winging shots, just winging these shots. And as Rahman went down from a left, I believe it was, Foreman whacked him with a right hand while he was down. He went down again, and then there was the right uppercut that finished him. Clean knockout. 2 years after losing to Frazier, Ali loses to Ken Norton. Norton breaks his jaw and outpoints him over 12 for the NABF title. Foreman wipes out Ken Norton in 2. So basically, Norton and Frazier have both outpointed Ali, and Foreman's wiped them both out in 2 rounds apiece. So he's the new Liston now. Nobody can beat George. How are you going to beat George? But they took it to Zaire, one of the biggest boxing events in the history of the sport. They had concerts with James Brown, Fela Kuti and other prominent artists days before, leading up to the fight. Ale Bomaye, as they followed Ali round. Ali kill him, kill Foreman. And maybe the occasion got to Foreman a little. He got cut in sparring and the fight got postponed. There's rumours that Foreman tried to get out of Zaire, but they had him blocked. He weren't getting out. Allegedly. Then Ali gets in the ring. Despite fears for his health that Foreman could really permanently put the damage on him, he surprises everybody by not trying to move from Foreman, but holding his feet against the ropes. The tactic is named the rope-a-dope. And while Foreman's throwing these haymakers, wasting a lot of energy, don't get me wrong, he landed some hard blows in there to the body and head. But Ali weaved a lot of shots, blocked a lot, came back with his own counters, and in the 8th round, a counter-attack from where Ali was on the ropes ended up in him spinning off the ropes, throwing combinations at Foreman on the ropes and inserting George to the canvas. George seemed to miscalculate the count. At the time, he claimed the count was too quick, but his titles were gone. Wikipedia have Ali as a 4-1 underdog going into that fight. Now, I'm thinking that's not a massive underdog. I'm not a big gambler. But when you consider it's a 2-horse race, there are quite considerable odds, aren't they?
We have a split decision.
It's a split decision. Which way is it going to go?
Fleury scores 143, 142, Ali.
Ali gets the first vote.
Judge Lutabit scores 145, 140, Spinks.
A big margin, 130, 135.
Buck scores 144, 141, the new
one of the greatest upsets in the history of the heavyweight championship. Leon Spinks, 6 professional fights, defeats the great man of the ring.
Olympic light heavy gold medalist from the 76 Montreal Olympics, Leon Spinks, had 7 professional fights, 6 wins and 1 draw, before he got the unexpected title shot against Muhammad Ali. Now, Spinks was a big underdog, 10-1 underdog. Now, I always remember hearing stories that Ali threw the fight so he could take the rematch and become the first man to win the heavyweight title 3 times. At that time, Ali and Floyd Patterson held the distinction of being the only 2 men to have held the world title twice, at heavyweight that is. Spinks just wouldn't stop working all throughout the fight. Brutal pace is what he said. The 15th round is said to be one of the all-time great rounds, and it is a great round. It really is a great round. You see, if anyone's going to tell me that Ali threw the fight so he could get a rematch and win the title for the 3rd time, well, why was he fighting like a crazy man in the last round to try and knock Spinks out? But Spinks, just stayed with him. It's one of my earliest memories of boxing, that fight there. Spinks versus Ali, 1978. One of my earliest memories. Ali said at the end he gave it his best. He said he knew it was close. He knew Spinks was a good fighter. He was the aggressor. It could have gone either way. Spinks said he always knew he was in it, and he had to go all out in the last few rounds. Ali said next time he'll get on his toes and beat him. He said the rope-a-dope tactics didn't work. He was too strong. It was more a mistaken strategy. And Ali did win the rematch, and he did get on his toes. But on that night there, Spinks defied the odds and won the title.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the decision of the judges. Judge Dave Moretti scores 143-142. Judge Harold Letterman scores 143-142. And Judge Larry Wallace scores 145-142. For the winner, by unanimous decision, and new IBF heavyweight champion of the world, Michael Spinks.
Well, there you have it, and it was a decision actually that was a lot closer than I thought it was, to tell you the truth.
It was a close fight the way the judges had it. But Michael Spinks fought the right fight, Barry. He did everything right the way he did it, in his own way. He beat the champion to the punch. He used his left jab. He kept the champion tentative a lot of times. Larry Holmes never really got that right hand off like he wanted to.
And so, we have a new heavyweight champion, just that quickly.
The Ring magazine naturally called it the upset of the year. Larry was 48-0. He needed one more fight to tie Marciano's 49-0 record. Now I'm going to state this again. Revisionist history is so annoying to a lot of us because this was always understood to be a heavyweight record. Marciano's 49-0. Spinks, former Olympic middleweight gold medalist, former undisputed light heavyweight champion, has moved up to heavy to challenge the lineal heavyweight champion of the world, Larry Holmes, who's been champion for 7 years. Now, Larry was always in hot water with the press. He was always in the shadow of Muhammad Ali. And this was a bit of a weight that he carried around. In regards to Marciano's record, when it came up at a press conference, Holmes was saying, I'm 35 fighting young men, and Rocky was 25 fighting old men. To be technical, I couldn't carry my jockstrap. A lot of observers believe Larry Holmes beat Michael in their first meeting and the second meeting, but he lost to UD, and Marciano's record remained. Was foul play at play? Spinks hooked up with this nutritionist Mackie Shilston, put him on this special diet of carbohydrates and proteins. This is a new era for fighters right now, you know. Instead of traditional road work, he was doing sprints, perhaps hill sprints. They trained him as if he was training for a decathlon instead of 15 rounds. Another popular client in the 80s that bulked up with Mackie Shilston was Evander Holyfield. That's how he converted from cruiser, and that's back when it was 190. With Mackie's assistance, he bulked up to heavyweight. He also helped Roy Jones bulk up to heavyweight, I believe, to fight John Ruiz. I believe Bernard Hopkins used him as well. It was said that Holmes had a slipped disc and it was giving him this shooting pain in his right shoulder. The doctor advised him not to go through with the fight and get operated straight away, but Holmes liked a pound note and he was getting paid well. And Spinks, the original herky-jerky style, gave Larry issues on the night. And he beat Larry. He took Larry's unbeaten record. And he won the rematch as well. Holmes went in as a 6-1 favorite.
Oh, the uppercut. What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's over. It's over.
Mike Tyson has been knocked out.
Unbelievable. This makes Cinderella look like a sad story, what Buster Douglas has done here tonight.
Let's go ahead and call it
the biggest upset in the history of heavyweight championship fights. Say it now, gentlemen. James Buster Douglas, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
It needs to be pointed out that Buster Douglas was on a 6-fight winning streak going into the Mike Tyson fight. The last 3 were very good opponents. Mike Williams was touted to perhaps be the next big thing in boxing. A big muscular physique, he was sparring Mike Tyson, and he was building a reputation. 16-1 at the time. Mike Williams was actually managed for a while by Bill Caton, who managed Mike Tyson. And Bill Caton said that Mike Williams floored Mike Tyson in a sparring session once. And Buster just broke Mike Williams down with this great jab, like one of the best heavyweight jabs in the sport, in the history of the sport. That's not an exaggeration. That's the truth. I'm not saying he's one of the best fighters, but his jab was a thing of beauty. Had an excellent jab. 84-inch reach. Just went down. It used to be 83 on BoxRec, but they're saying 83. 83-inch reach. Buster had an excellent jab. Ask Tony Tucker how good his jab was. You know, then he followed up with the Trevor Berbick victory, former champion. Then there was the victory against Oliver McCall, who went on to knock out Lennox Lewis and beat Larry Holmes. Buster Douglas was a very capable fighter who Mickey Duff told the old administration, Costi Amato, Caton, Jim Jacobs, stay away from Buster Douglas. Now, Tyson was already scheduled to fight Evander Holyfield. They penciled this in ahead of the Douglas fight. They were looking ahead. In their minds, this was just a routine fight. Douglas had fought on the undercard of Mike Tyson's last 3 cards. He beat Mike Williams on the Michael Spinks card. He beat Trevor Berbick on the Frank Bruno card. And he beat Oliver McCall on the Carl the Truth Williams card. So he was used to fighting on them Tyson cards, and he came in there ready. You know, hearing the result, I didn't see it live, but hearing the result was one thing. But watching the tape and watching him rattle Tyson's head, jerking his head back with them double jabs, and then he started bringing in the straight right. It was like, phew. Yeah, it was not just a boxing upset. It was one of the major moments in sport, in just like entertainment, sports entertainment or media. That fight, that beatdown. Then you had the long count where Tyson caught up with him with that uppercut. But, you know, let's be fair. Douglas got up when the referee instructed him to do so, and he carried on fighting and he beat up Mike. Kevin Rooney, he was gone after the Spinks fight, and the whole camp was decimated. Jim Jacobs, he died. Bill Caton, they got rid of him. Cuss was dead. Kevin Rooney was gone after the Spinks fight, and for the Frank Bruno and Carl the Truth Williams fight, I believe Aaron Snowell was the head coach. And in the Buster Douglas fight, Aaron Snowell neglected to pack the end swell as Mike's left eye was ballooning up and shutting. No end swell. They had this water balloon with cold water in it. You know, the end swell is a specific tool, a flat piece of iron that they keep in ice, and it's very effective at reducing swelling. At least more effective than a water balloon. It was amateur hour. Douglas's movement, his jab, Mike just couldn't cope with the skills on the night. Just couldn't cope with the skills. In the 10th, Buster walked Mike into that right uppercut. Somehow Mike didn't go straight down. And then he followed up. Mike was on the canvas. His gum shield flew out of his mouth, and while he was on the canvas, he attempted to put the gum shield back in his mouth, and he partly got the gum shield in his mouth, and half of it was hanging out. And he got up before the 10 count, but the ref waved it off, and that was that. The Tokyo Dome. Buster Douglas was a 42-1 underdog.
Michael BENTT on the verge of a big moment, and he's got it. That's it. A first-round KO for Michael BENTT. And there goes Tommy Morrison's $8 million payday.
Your attention, please. Referee Danny Campbell enforces the 3 knockdown rule. The official time, 1 minute. 33 seconds into the very first round. The winner by TKO and new WBO heavyweight champion of the world, Michael BENTT.
Michael BENTT had a 148 8 amateur record. He was a really good amateur. He lost to Ray Mercer at the Olympic trials in '88. He could have fought for Jamaica, but he would have lost his US citizenship. So he turned pro and got knocked out by an individual named Jerry Jones. Knocked out in a round. So it was a long road back. Long road back. But he put some wins together and got a crack at Tommy Morrison, WBO champion, who was on the cusp of having a multi-million-dollar fight with Lennox Lewis until Michael Bent and the 3 knockdown rule came along and stopped Morrison. Morrison, managed by Bill Caton, was 38-1. 38-1. It was a huge favourite. And I just found this information here. The Vegas oddsmaker thought Morrison was such a huge favourite and Bent had no chance. They didn't even bother posting a line on the fight. George Foreman put it down to overconfidence. To me, it looked a little nervous the way Morrison came in, and Bent looked relaxed and wasn't too put out about fighting off the ropes. And his counters just found a mark, and Morrison, as most people were, was surprised by the hand speed of Bent. Bent would only have one defense of that title and never fight again. He defended against Herbie Hyde in London, Millwall, I believe it was. Bent was actually born in London, and he was knocked out. But luckily for Michael, this was only a few years after the Watson and Eubank fight, and the ambulance and paramedic provision was on point, and they got him to the hospital quickly, and the injuries never impacted on his life as it has done others. I don't know if he's still acting. He went on to do acting. He was in one of them state property movies. Morrison eventually got the big fight with Lennox Lewis. He lost that via knockout. I never really climbed the heights that the hype was suggesting he would. He did have wins over the likes of Razor Ruddock, George Foreman. You got to give him some due.
Lewis unbeaten, remember, after 25 fights. Oh, he's got him. Oh, Lewis walked into a right hand, and that was the sucker punch that they worried about. And Lewis staggers, and the referee has decided it's all over. My goodness, what an upset. And Lennox Lewis's career must now be in tatters. Oliver, the Atomic Bull McCall, the 29-year-old from Chicago, has stopped Lennox Lewis, the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, in the second round. McCall says, I told you so, I told you so, reminiscent of Muhammad Ali 3 decades ago. And Oliver McCall and his entourage cannot simply believe it themselves. It was a right hand delivered with startling ferocity and startling speed.
WBC heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis, 25-0, defended against his mandatory contender Oliver McCall, was knocked out in 2. His experienced trainer Pepe Correa, who had previously worked with Sugar Ray Leonard, during the interval after the first round told Lennox, go out there and knock out that bum. A bum who had never been off his feet as a pro or seriously hurt in a fight previously. Chief sparring partner for Mike Tyson, tough as nails, and Lennox paid for it. Correa lost his job, and rightly so. Lennox lost his belt. McCall was a 5-1 underdog. It can't be denied it was an upset. But with the durability of Oliver McCall and Manny Stewart in McCall's corner plotting Lennox's downfall, it makes you scrutinise how much of an upset it really was. Lennox had beaten some good fighters, Razor Ruddock, Tony Tucker, Frank Bruno, but he went out there recklessly in the second and threw, in reflection, what were silly punches and got countered by a great right hand. His belts were gone. He protested the stoppage. HBO, I saw their broadcast a lot later. I always had the BBC copy. But Larry Merchant was hinting strongly that Don King, who managed McCall, had influential friends in the WBC, was instrumental in Lennox's undoing. Now, it's slanderous, but it looks to me like Oliver McCall and Emmanuel Stewart did their homework on what was a green Lennox Lewis at the time and got the job done. Lennox Lewis went on to seek out the training services of Emmanuel Stewart and eventually became undisputed champion and one of the greatest heavyweights ever, perhaps. But on that night there, he was caught out by the 5-1 underdog. Controversial stoppage. In hindsight, it being a heavyweight championship, they should have at least gave Lennox the chance to see if he could see out the follow-up attack. But from what I saw, his legs wobbled everywhere when he got up. And maybe it was an oversight for the ref to jump in like that. But his legs were gone, in all truth. Great win for Oliver McCall.
George Foreman enjoying his best round of the fight here in round 10. There's a right hand. Down goes Moore. He's flat on his back. He may not get up.
Not maybe. He's not moving.
Moore could be about to lose the heavyweight title.
I don't believe this.
Joe Cortez pulls up the count. It is over.
Holy
and George Foreman has pulled off the miracle that no one thought possible. George Foreman.
Moore is still down. Moore cannot get up. He's still down. He doesn't know where he is. He's bleeding from the nose. He walked into a picture-perfect left-right combination.
An unbelievable, a stunning finish.
Listen to the crowd
of a heavyweight championship fight that has left this MGM Grand crowd of nearly 15,000 in total disbelief.
George Foreman was just coming off a unanimous decision loss to Tommy Morrison for the vacant WBO belt when he got a title shot at unified heavyweight champion Michael Moorer, who he himself, and in hindsight, was coming off an upset that could have got on the list when he outpointed Evander Holyfield and became heavyweight champion, the first Southpaw heavyweight champion. Moorer must have been 26 years of age, perhaps 25, 26. George Foreman was 45 years of age, 8 years older than the previous eldest man to hold the heavyweight championship, and that was Jersey Joe Walcott, 45 years of age. Foreman had a 72-4 record. Moorer, 35-0, had previously held the WBO belt, which was very lightly regarded at the time, and he was previously a WBO light heavyweight champion as well. He was a 2-1 favorite. He piled up the points behind that southpaw jab and was well in the lead. Then in the 10th, he looked like he was losing his shape a little, but it looked like just a little blip that'll get through. When Foreman placed one right hand with not much power, Michael Moorer took it, and then another 1-2 came through, and Michael Moorer was on the deck, counted out, and George Foreman became the oldest man to win the heavyweight title. It was sensational. It was sensational. To think he first won the heavyweight title in 1973 when he steamrolled Joe Frazier, a fight that made the list as one of the biggest upsets. And then 21 years later, he would knock out Michael Moorer and repeat the feat. I remember watching a program where Moorer and Foreman were giving accounts of the fight, and Moorer was just furious, like, why is he talking like he meant to do it? He didn't mean to do it, he got lucky. Because Foreman was saying he was setting him up. It was all an elaborate plan, and that just drove Michael crazy. But I don't believe in lucky punches. I do believe in George Foreman's power, though.
Mike is in trouble here, and he's just getting teed off on. But Mike won't go down. The referee has to stop it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the time. 37 seconds in round number 11. Our referee in charge, Mitch Halpern, stops the contest. He's the winner by way of technical knockout in a stunning upset. The new WBA heavyweight champion of the world, Evander, the real deal, Holyfield.
This was one of the magical boxing events. A fight that should have happened 6 years previously, but it was probably bigger in 96 than it would have been in 1990. This was huge. Tyson came out of jail 95. 4 knockouts later, one WBC strap, which he paid step-aside money to Lennox Lewis to not face him. He still ended up giving that belt up. Then picked up a WBA strap from Bruce Seldon on the night that Tupac was assassinated. We now await the super fights. November 1996. It just captured the public's imagination. Let's not get it twisted. Holyfield was thought to be a sacrificial lamb. He lost the majority decision to Michael Moorer, won a 10-rounder in a very good fight with Ray Mercer, and then was knocked out by Riddick Bowe in the rubber match of the trilogy. Didn't look sharp against Bobby Chiz in what was supposed to be a routine knockout, and then in with Mike Tyson. The betting odds opened Holyfield a 25-1 underdog, and it closed at 5-1. There was rumours that Holyfield had a heart attack during the loss to Michael Moorer. He looked on death's door against Riddick Bowe. He nearly got Riddick out of there. It was a great fight. What comes to mind was how strong Holyfield was in the clinch. It seemed almost mental as much as physical, the way Holyfield wouldn't let Mike impose his will on him. Mike couldn't push him back. He did land some good shots, but Holyfield blocked a lot of them, did some good defensive work. He wasn't adverse to keeping his head in Mike's face, to keep Mike honest and on defense. And it was a revelation of a performance, you know, like Mike had some moments, the mid-rounds, there was that body attack. I've watched it so many times. And Holyfield was feeling the pressure, but he soaked it up. There was also a low blow by Holyfield, which hurt Mike pretty bad. And Mike got cut by the head because Holyfield was bringing his head in there. I'm not saying it was dirty, but Mike was cut. And Holyfield was fighting dirty. He wasn't going to just give this up. You know what I mean? He's fighting hard. When I say dirty, it's nothing that Mike hasn't done himself. And then Mike was down in the sixth. His attack started slowing up. And he wasn't reaping the rewards that he probably thought he would. He threw some really good uppercuts, body shots and uppercuts, hooks, but Holyfield took them. And the fight swung in the middle rounds, right there. At the end of one of the middle rounds, Mike was gesturing to the referee, pointing to his eye. Headbutt, headbutt. Complaining to the referee. Not a good sign. The knockdown was not a headshot. It was a balance shot to the torso. Mike was losing momentum. Even if it wasn't a headshot, he was losing momentum. It was more symbolic than a big scoring headshot. Holyfield was warned for another butt, and Mike's eye was getting worse. Mike looked like he was gasping for air. He had the gum shield almost out of his mouth as the doctor inspected his cut eye. Basically, the Bruce Seldon fight went one round and he didn't put up no resistance. Frank Bruno, he got smacked up in 3, no resistance. Peter McNeely came out there like a biker and couldn't get past the first round. The Buster Mathis fight, Mike missed a whole load of shots before he caught him in the 4th or 5th, and he won that one. Mike didn't have the rounds underneath him, considering he's coming off a 4-year bid, or whatever time it was, 3-year bid. He wasn't battle hardened enough for this fight. And even though Holyfield had been knocked out by Riddick and beaten up in the late stages by Michael Moorer, he was the more active of the two. And I think Mike paid dearly with his lack of activity. There was a lot of wrestling, a lot of clinching. Ferdy Pacheco, I went back and listened to some of the later rounds, and he made a great point. He said Holyfield is fighting that old school Archie Moore, and I can't remember who else he mentioned, type of fight, where they would clinch the crap out of you and make you fight to their rhythm. And that was very accurate. And Mike wasn't up for it. Now, I'm here to tell you this now. The pre-jail Mike Tyson didn't back down to no one. Even the Buster Douglas fight, he stoically took his punishment, a whole load of punishment, and was still trying to knock Douglas out. This fight here, I saw Mike complaining to the referee. Mike was soft at this stage of his career. Prison softened him up. If you look at the intensity he fights Razor Ruddock with in both fights, compared to what we saw against Holyfield, still throw the lethal punches. He can still take a decent shot, but the fire is not there. As Tyson tired, he became more square. I don't know how Tyson survived the 10th, to be honest with you. He took such a beating. And in the 11th, just 6-7 punch combinations just going in there. And Mike was just seeking refuge, and at one stage he wanted to turn around and be done with it, but that inner Cus D'Amato probably said, Mike, don't do it. Go take your licks. And it was over.
Okay, it's over. We are giving up. It hurts too much. No, it's okay. Don't worry.
Wait a minute.
They're stopping it. They are. That's exactly what Cornelius Winter just told us.
I can't believe what I just seen.
Vitali Klitschko elects not to go on with his left hand apparently too damaged to continue. And Chris Byrd gets a victory. Chris Byrd taking a fight on 10 days' notice. Retrieves a portion of what he lost last year against Ike Ibeabuchi. Vitali Klitschko stunningly and mysteriously dropping out of a fight in which he appeared headed toward an easy victory.
He doesn't have the mentality of a champion.
Like this one, you know, Chris Byrd had a 30-1-0 record, only losing to Ike Ibeabuchi. Klitschko was 27-0, WBO champion. Couldn't find no betting odds online, but Chris Byrd would have definitely have been the underdog. A lot of people say Chris Byrd got lucky. I think the only person you could ask that, in hope of getting any kind of answer, whether it's truthful or not, would be Chris Byrd or maybe Vitali. Lucky in what way? That Vitali didn't fight through the injury, or lucky that Vitali got injured, or lucky that he didn't face an opponent who wouldn't have quit. There's lots of heavyweights who wouldn't have quit. So I can't run with that. Chris, never a concussive puncher, really a middleweight who found himself in the heavyweight division. And he found himself in the heavyweight division when a lot of the Soviet monsters invited himself to the party. You know, like, let's remember, Chris has beaten the likes of David Tua, Evander Holyfield, gave Alexander Povetkin a good fight, Frazier Quendo. He's got names there. He can fight. I don't think Vitali understood the sensibilities of what the heavyweight championship would mean to the HBO viewer and the HBO crew. Like, Larry Merchant was scathing, said he didn't have the mindset of a fighter when he quit on his stool with a shoulder injury. Chris did what he had to do, man. Like, you know, Chris was in there. His style is pretty awkward to deal with while you've got a bad shoulder, because he's twisting and turning, and Vitali's having to move constantly to keep up with him, and the shoulder's hurting. And Chris deserved his victory. He deserved his victory, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Vitali came again and redeemed himself. But this was Chris's night. I couldn't find a line on the odds anywhere.
Oh, he's got him! He's got him! He got careless and he's got him! Is it Oliver McCall all over again? It is! And Lewis has gone! Lewis has gone! It's another upset of immense proportions. This has been billed as thunder in Africa, and the thunder and the lightning and tempest have washed over Lennox Lewis, and all his titles have gone, and he has only himself to blame. Stunning finish. They knew all about the Rahman right hand. They told him about it. They said, don't do what you did against Oliver McCall. And despite it all, he got too careless. What a finish.
Lennox, unfortunately, appears on the list twice. Not for scoring the upset, but being on the receiving end of the upset. Both times by deadly right hands. The first time was Oliver McCall, and next time round was HASIM Rahman. Brakpan, South Africa, 2001. So they talk about Lennox having a cameo in Ocean's 11, being blamed for a shock defeat. They claim in the 2 crucial days the British fighter spent filming the Julia Roberts and George Clooney movie was a disastrous mistake which cost him not only his free world titles but his potential $75 million payday against Mike Tyson, while HASIM Rahman had been training diligently for their fight in South Africa. Lewis was in Las Vegas to appear in the remake of the 1960 Rat Pack classic, Ocean's 11. They say Lennox was paid next to nothing for the role, but was keen to take part regardless. I don't look into that too much because Lennox Lewis is a seasoned pro at this stage. He knows how much liberties he can take in a training camp and how much he cannot. So he gauged it as well as he could. He came to the ring to fight and got knocked out. He weighed in at a career heaviest of 18 stone, but you know, he was 36, so maybe getting the weight off wasn't that easy. Now here's my take. I think Lennox got a flashback or some idea that he was Ali in Zaire. Rahman came out to DMX. Lennox had African dancers and African music, African drums playing live. He seemed a little starstruck that he was going to meet Nelson Mandela after the fight. He was with Winnie Mandela before, and he had a little beef with Rahman, that Rahman actually ignored an invitation to meet Nelson Mandela. I think that was after the fight. But Rahman wasn't there for that. Rahman was there for the belt, for the victory, for the win, for the life-changing money. I've heard people say that Rahman got lucky. I mean, I'm not going to say you don't know anything about boxing, but what I don't get is you can strategize for someone who has more obvious gifts than you. Longer arms, longer legs, longer reach. They may be faster than you. You can strategize around that. There's lots of things you can do. Like, if you watch Rahman in the first round, he never reaches up with the jab because then his chin's going to go all up in the air. He keeps his center of gravity. He jabs to the torso. He uses his legs pretty well and hits Lennox with some good shots. Lennox gets caught with a good right in the first round. And his coach, is it Adrian Davis, said, yeah, I like how you relax. Stay like that. Don't let him upset you. Rahman stayed relaxed the whole way through the fight, looking for openings. I remember reading a magazine post-fight, and Lennox himself said, yeah, Rahman fought without no fear. That's what he said. He was capitalizing on a lot of Lennox's mistakes. Arguably, Lennox was in front by the time the knockout punch came. But, you know, Lennox made some mistakes. He went to the ropes, came off the ropes, then he went back. And as soon as he bounced off the ropes, Rahman timed him beautifully with that right hand. Rahman's odds, initially quoted at 4-1 or better, have narrowed to 11-4. Lennox Lewis with the 7-2 on favourite.
That he can score a knockdown, and he's got him again! Straight left hand this time! Down he goes for the third time already, and this is early in the round. This looks like curtains for Vladimir Klitschko. Goes down again, and it is stopped all over round two. That is one of the biggest turn-ups you will see in a boxing ring in a long, long time. I think that's the biggest upset in the heavyweight division since Evander Holyfield beat Mike Tyson when he was something like 18-1. 27 seconds of round two, all over. Corey Sanders has the win of his life.
You look at Corey Sanders, 6'4", naturally talented puncher, but you look at the physique and you can see he didn't apply himself as well as he could have. Apparently he liked to round a golf and he liked the finer things in life, but he could fight and he had some quick hands, southpaw stance, and he could punch. The fight with HASIM Rahman previously is a gem. It's an absolute gem of a fight. I remember Corey really pissed me off because I used to like Bobby Chiz. And what Bobby was doing at heavyweight at that stage of his career, I don't know. And he gave Bobby Chiz the beating. So, after the Rahman loss, where both men were on the canvas, thrilling fight, he goes on a little run and gets a shot at the 40-1-0 WBO heavyweight champion, Vladimir Klitschko. Now, this is a pre-Manuel Steward trained Klitschko. And say what you like, people liked watching this version of Klitschko threw a lot of punches. He was on a 16-fight win streak, 5th defense of the WBO title, and he scored a lot of knockouts. He had one reverse on his record 5 years previous against Ross Purity, where basically he just ran out of gas. So it says here that Vlad was a 1-20 on favourite to beat Sanders. But what's the easiest way to summarise the fight? The commentator said it best on HBO and in the UK, Sky. He just couldn't see the left hand from Saunders, that backhand, he couldn't see it. It is a very quick punch. Very quick punch. Klitschko was up and down like a yo-yo. What was it, 4 times in 2 rounds? And his career looked over at that stage there. It looked over, you know. Big upset. Corey Sanders became WBO champion. Great performance by Corey. That was really exciting. And he could produce them type of performances on his day. Vlad looked like a truck had hit him, man. He did recover, however. Hooked up with Manny Stewart. And it got a lot better after that. Not straight away, though. It didn't get better straight away. They still had the blip against Lamont Brewster. And his reign was tinged with criticism that he just held excessively at times. But it was a 10-year reign nonetheless. He came back from it. So there's always redemption if you work hard enough. Corey, I don't know what the politics were. He didn't keep that belt. He did fight for the WBC belt against Vitali in his next fight. His brother was basically fighting for Vlad's honor, and he got the belt back. It's kind of like Vitali, after he lost to Chris Bird, Vladimir was fighting for Vitali's honor and he got the belt back. He outpointed Chris Bird. That's how they used to roll.
And now Robert Byrd stops the fight. Robert Byrd takes a look at Vladimir Klitschko and decides he can't continue and stops the fight. And that may be the end of the Vladimir Klitschko heavyweight contender story.
Well, it probably is. He punched himself out early. Remember, we talked about as early as the 2nd and 3rd rounds that he looked tired. He was he was throwing a tremendous number of punches, and he let Brewster off the hook somehow in the last round while he was tired.
And Layman Brewster gets the win of a lifetime on a night when it looked as though he couldn't conceivably survive the beating he was taking.
Lamont was always a puncher, but he had lost to Charles Shuford and Clifford Etienne. So nobody was expecting to beat Vlad for that vacant WBO belt. He was the 7-1 underdog, and he was taking a beating. He looked like a cruiserweight at times compared to Vlad, and Vlad was jamming him, tying him up, landing power shots, but Brewster took them all, and he landed that big left hook in the 3rd. And Vlad took it. And looking back, I think Vlad had a lot of anxiety issues back then. Just had this worried look. Like, is my stamina going to hold out? Can I take the punches? Manny brought the leaning on thing. Like, lean on the smaller man and deny him leverage. And it's evident in this fight here. But you could also see the range control on the right hand. And it's an extremely powerful punch. And he's got Brewster down. It wasn't called a knockdown, but the second one was called a knockdown. And Vlad was following up to finish. And the commentary team, I don't think they really noticed it. Brewster landed a right hand. And it clearly hurt Vlad. It clearly hurt Vlad. And then they ended up wrestling each other down. The 4th round, great round actually. Very pivotal. The tide is now turning. The 5th round, for anyone saying it was a lucky victory, Lamont landed that left hook again, and he was taking a beating in the round, so he took the shots. I don't see how people can say fights are lucky when someone is taking the best of their opponent's shots. That's not luck, that's grit. And let's remember, Lamont hurt him earlier with the left hook in the 3rd. Klitschko went to pieces. I don't know if it was mental, physical, or a combination of the two. Brewster followed up, battering him on the ropes. At the end of the round, he seemed to trip over Robert Byrd's feet. When he got up, it wasn't called a knockdown because either he tripped or it was after the bell. He was in no condition to continue, and Robert Byrd waved it off. Massive upset. From out of nowhere, Brewster became champion. He made 3 defenses. Klitschko eventually avenged the defeat and went on to do great things. His old trainer, is it Fritz? He said, if Vladimir loses to Lamont Brewster, if he gets knocked out by Brewster, he should retire. Good thing Vlad didn't take his advice, eh?
All three scores to the winner by unanimous decision. From the United Kingdom, the new unified heavyweight champion of the world.
There is a new era in heavyweight boxing. One of the biggest upsets in the last few years has happened here in Dusseldorf. He said he'd do it. It's unanimous on the cards. Tyson Fury, world heavyweight king for Britain. And it is elation here from the camp. Vladimir Klitschko is dejected but offers respect and congratulations as the champion he has been. Unbelievable.
Dusseldorf. The scores read 112-115, 111-116, 112-115, and the new. So Tyson Fury ends the 10-year reign of Vladimir Klitschko. Unanimous decision. Wasn't an action-packed fight. Tyson Fury basically fought the fight that suited him best, and with Vladimir a little hesitant to lead off, it made it easy for the taller, rangier Fury to jab, move, occasionally mix in the odd right hand, and outpoint Vlad, and literally take no punishment while doing it. Fury done a great job and ended the reign. When I think about it now, you know what that was similar to? It was similar to AJ and Usyk, and AJ just not pulling the trigger at all. At least having a go to pull the trigger. In saying that, Usyk and Fury, well, that Fury, are elusive targets, but you have to try and hustle and bustle them out of their stride. And Vlad never looked like he either tried or knew how to, and it was the same with AJ against Usyk. Vitali, his brother, in the later rounds, he was right up on the ring apron, like screaming at his brother, imploring him to throw punches. In my opinion, Klitschko's inability to throw to the body left him a sitting duck, and his belts were gone. Fury proved all his doubters wrong, me being one of them. The only decent round Vlad had was the last round, in my opinion. Klitschko was the favourite going in at 1-4. The odds for Fury were 3-1, and it was 33-1 for a draw. Yeah, it was a good upset. It was a good upset, you know, but in hindsight, Fury's form going into the fight, the Derek Chisora performance and the Christian Hammer performance showed the improvements were being made in the run-up to the Klitschko fight.
Andy Ruiz Jr. has so much time left in this, the seventh round. Can he take it and write his own history? And Anthony Joshua could be counted out here. He just about gets to his feet.
He's going to do well to get through this round, Adam. He's badly hurt here, Joshua.
His legs have gone. A minute 45 to the referee doing. Wow, he's waved it off. Wow. Andy Ruiz Jr. becomes the first Mexican heavyweight champion.
June the 1st, 2019, Anthony Joshua, 22-0, takes on Andy Ruiz, 32-1 at the MSG. Gerald Miller, he popped dirty. He was original opponent for his American debut. They tried to get the substitutes in. The likes of Karnacki and Luis Ortiz turned down millions. But Andy Ruiz, he wasn't about to turn down the opportunity. He had already fought recently, a stoppage win against Alexander Dimitrenko, so he was in relatively good shape. However, against AJ, he was up against a 6'6" unified champion, 82-inch reach, undefeated, with a high KO percentage. Andy was a huge underdog. The betting odds here say Andy started as a 14-1 underdog, and the book closed at 10-1. He was 20-1 to win by knockout. It all seemed to be going to plan for Joshua Floyd Ruiz in the third, but when attempting to finish Andy off, he caught a left hook that led to one knockdown. He was knocked down 4 times in all, AJ, and twice in the 7th. And Ruiz deserved his win, man, when the fight was stopped. AJ sold out the MSG on his American debut, the big UK pay-per-view draw, the Olympic champion, the endorsement friendly, the knockout puncher, arguably has the best resume in the current heavyweight division, was beaten by an outsider, a rank outsider. Massive upset. There was a lot of theories that he wasn't right going in, that he was concussed in a sparring session with Joey DeWayco beforehand. But Andy never gave up on himself in the ring. He never gave up on himself when he was down. And he became the first Mexican to win the world heavyweight title. Maybe one of the biggest upsets on the list. That's my top 20. I think it's a good list. There's going to be people who think there could have been stuff included. Some stuff could have been omitted. Some people were going to say fights like AJ versus Usyk is a massive upset. Well, Usyk is an Olympic gold medalist. He fought heavyweights quite regular at the WSB and amateur level and beat them as well. Former undisputed cruiserweight champion, a mandatory for AJ's belts. A lot of people thought Usyk could win. Could have got on there, but, you know, other fights I've omitted from the list, like the rematch between Witherspoon and Smith, or Holyfield versus Mora, they could be on there equally. So it's subjective, and there's always the comment section to express what you feel. Peace. Peace. Peace.